Hello and welcome. You're watching Global Lens. I'm Parikshit Luthra. India and the United States are yet to sign a trade deal, but talks are gaining momentum with both sides aiming to finalize an agreement by the end of this month. Negotiators remain optimistic despite lingering tensions and high tariffs. The US push for greater access to India's agricultural market and India's efforts to safeguard its farmers continue to be the main sticking points. Meanwhile, a high-level UTA Senate delegation led by Senate President Stuart is currently on a 2-week trade and innovation mission in India. The trip, coordinated by the World Trade Center UTA and the Indus International Research Foundation, includes lawmakers and business leaders with stops scheduled in Mumbai, Goa, Pune, Hyderabad, New Delhi and Bengaluru. The delegation is looking to deepen economic, educational and technological ties and position UTA as an alternative trade and investment partner to China for Indian businesses. UTA leaders have highlighted India's growing potential as a manufacturing and market hub in meetings across Pune and other cities. Bilateral trade negotiations between India and the US have seen 5 rounds since February, after Prime Minister Narendra Modi's meeting with US President Donald Trump earlier this year. Both sides set a target to boost bilateral trade to $500 billion by 2030, up from the current $191 billion. Officials say steady progress is being made with sensitive issues and final wording is now close to resolution. Both governments hope to announce a deal soon. For context, US tariffs on Indian goods currently average around 50%, including additional measures linked to India's Russian energy imports. That's not all. Stocks rallied across large parts of Asia and Europe amid hopes the US government shutdown would end. South Korean Kospi rallied over 3%. Shares in Japan and Hong Kong also gained over 1%. The US Senate has passed the first stage of a deal that could put an end to the longest-running government shutdown. At least 8 Democrats backed the agreement proposed by the Republicans. But this deal does not address demands on healthcare made by the Democrats. The bill will now proceed to the House of Representatives for approval before being sent to President Trump for his signature. The agreement proposed by Republicans will fund some parts of the federal government, including food aid, veteran programs and the legislative branch, among others, and extend the federal funding until the 30th of January. Joining us now to discuss this further is UTA Senator Stuart and Jonathan Freedman of the World Trade Center at UTA. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us. President Adams, let me begin by asking you about what you seek to achieve during your visit to India. You met, along with Jonathan, the Commerce Minister of India, Piyush Goyal, a short while back. Currently, UTA-India trade is around $624 million. What are some of the opportunities you are looking to leverage?
Well, we believe that the world is stronger and if we work together. So one of the options we're looking at, or one of the things we hope to come out with, is a better relationship. When you trade, you actually, it's very important you have trust. In fact, probably the most important factor in any type of trade agreement or any type of trade results are having companies that trust each other and have governments that trust each other. So we're very hopeful for a resolution to the trade negotiations. But as those trade negotiations conclude, we think it's really important to be able to have relationships that are built between Utah and India. Utah is the strongest, has the strongest economy in the United States. Of all 50 states, we have the fastest growing GDP, very similar to India. So India has a strong economy. We have a very young population, and India has a young population. So as we look forward to what we can do together, we think both India and Utah have similarities and common goals, and we can strengthen both India and Utah by trying to work out and build relationships while we're here during these 2 weeks.
Right. Jonathan, if I were to ask you, which are some of the areas where you would like to expand investments, both from Utah into India and from India to Utah?
Well, let me just say thank you for having us on. We see tremendous opportunity between India and the state of Utah. Utah has always led on subnational diplomacy and economic development, and we have a delegation of business leaders and government leaders here on the ground to find those opportunities. We have great synergies between clean energy, any state in the United States, and you have great expertise there. In fact, we're both the United States and India are members of the Quad initiative, along with Japan and Australia. to shore up each other's mineral stockpiles. We see great opportunity in aerospace and defense. We're very strong in composite materials used in that industry, financial services, information technology, and so forth.
President Adams, one thing that is holding back India and US trade right now is that trade deal. We've been in negotiations for almost 7 to 8 months. Uh, there is no clarity on whether we will be able to agree on the India-US trade deal by the end of this year. What do you think is holding the US back to agreeing to any deal with India right now?
Well, again, there are sensitive negotiations going on right now, and I don't think it's appropriate for me to comment on those. But I will say that, we have smart people, and one of the best hockey players I know talked about why he was so successful. And the reason he said he was so successful, he skates to where the puck's going to be. I'm optimistic that trade negotiation will happen. And when it does happen, we hope to place Utah at the forefront of negotiations and to trade, not only negotiations, but trade deals that can happen between Utah and India. We deal with the energy issues similar to what you do. We have, again, a very smart population, very tech savvy population. And we see the future is in IT and in tech development, AI development. But AI needs data centers, data center needs energy. Utah, we hope, is going to be an energy capital for the world. We know India, with the largest population, the fastest growing population in the world, is going to need energy. So we're here to try to work through some of those opportunities. And again, we're very optimistic something will happen. And I don't think it's appropriate for me to talk about those sensitive negotiations.
Right. Jonathan, the same question to you. India and the United States have always discussed ways to increase market access for US companies, reduce the trade deficit because the trade surplus is in India's favor. What do you think has changed this time around with Donald Trump in the White House for a second term? Yes, he's been asking for lower tariffs across the board, but what is the ambition? What do you think the US wants at this stage?
Well, I think that the president and his team are being very thoughtful about creating the best deal for the American people. I can certainly appreciate that. I do believe, and I think that the president also believes that we are better together. We're stronger together. There's so many commonalities between the United States and India, and we've always been allies and strong trade partners. As we look to diversify our industries away from China, not leaving, but just to diversify, that's prudent. India is a natural location for US manufacturers to partner with factories here on the ground. We'll see how negotiations go. I'm very optimistic that a mutually beneficial and prosperous deal will be negotiated between India and the United States. And as President Adams just mentioned, we are here on the ground because we want to ensure that Utah leads in partnering with companies across the country of India.
Right. President Adams, when it comes to US-China relations, there is another trade truce between those two countries. But as the president of the Utah Senate, how do you see ties with India over ties with China?
Well, I think the world is a better place when we are all able to work together. But one of the things that I think is most concerning is the lack of being able to have access to critical minerals and to other things that are very essential for manufacturing. And the world is a lot better spot when the availability of products like that are widely dispersed. As Jonathan Freedman indicated, we have a great source and we are very rich in critical minerals. We need to be able to mine those and be able to process them. India has critical minerals also, but if you have those available throughout the world, it actually allows for more stability. And you can't have any one source, because if that source is not available, our manufacturing industries, our economies all rely on those. So it's really important that we have a distribution of available resources around the world. And that's something we want to talk to India about also. Again, I think India is in a unique position to be able to help bring that world stability. And I would say that my guess is that in those trade negotiations, international security is part of that discussion. And the more we can do to promote international security, in addition to economics for both countries, I think those have to be hand in glove, tied together as security with economic trade negotiations.
Right. So, Jonathan, would you want to add to that, that currently, would you say that US companies are more interested in partnering with India because of the kind of restrictions China has put on supply chains of critical minerals? Do you think it's more important for US companies to look at those partnerships with India for the long term?
I do. I agree with that. I think that we want to make sure that we're diversified. Our businesses need certainty, and when certain supply chains get cut off, it creates uncertainty that makes it very difficult to conduct business. So, by diversifying, U.S. companies and Utah companies know that their supply chains are stable, that they can scale their businesses, which benefits both Utahns and Indians and it just makes the world a safer place. The more we conduct business together, the safer we are. It's
Right.
in everyone's best interest, and that goes for countries around the world. It's in our best interest to maintain, strong partnerships and relationships that are enduring and less likely to be adversarial.
Okay. And President Adams, my final question to you. We've seen the US government shut down almost going over 40 days. Are you expecting some sort of resolution to this in a few days?
That's hopeful. It appears they have come to an agreement, but we'll see as it moves forward. And I'm confident they will. We're going to continue to try to move forward as we work through that process. But the key is not knowing what will happen. We want to position ourselves that no matter what happens, we're in a key spot to be able to maintain the strong economy that we have in Utah. Again, Utah leads of all 50 states. We have the strongest economy. We have the best regulatory environment, and businesses do better in Utah. We sense that is the same in India, and that's why we want to partner with India, because we believe a strong economy for Utah and India helps both America and India and makes the world a more stable place to live.
All right. President Adams and Jonathan Freedman, thank you so much for being with us here on Global Lens and giving us your view on what the state of Utah wants to do with India and why they see India as a preferential partner.
Thank you.
A quick look now at other global headlines. US President Donald Trump has defended his tariff policy again. He claimed that the levies made America the richest country in the world. The president called the people criticizing the tariffs as fools and promised that Americans will receive dividends of $2,000 each from the tariffs revenue soon. His comments came after the Supreme Court questioned the legality of tariffs while hearing a case last week. In August, a federal appeals court ruled President Trump overstepped his authority with the imposition of tariffs. The U.S. Supreme Court is yet to deliver its verdict on the matter. The White House has confirmed that U.S. President Donald Trump will participate in the swearing-in ceremony of the new U.S. Ambassador to India, Sergio Gore, later tonight. Gore is expected to take charge in New Delhi soon after the swearing-in. Gore's appointment was confirmed by a Senate vote in October. He will be the youngest U.S. ambassador to India. Hamas has handed over the remains of an Israeli soldier who was killed in Gaza in 2014. The release of his body was part of the ceasefire agreement signed in October. Meanwhile, U.S. presidential advisor Jared Kushner met with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to take stock of the situation in Gaza. As per the Palestinian Health Ministry over the weekend, Israel continued striking Gaza, killing at least 2 persons in 24 hours. From one war-torn region to another, the Russian Ministry of Defense said its forces have captured a Ukrainian settlement in the southeastern part of the country. Russia has also attacked key power and energy infrastructure in Ukraine, with over 1 lakh people left without water or electricity. At least 11 people were killed after a boat carrying undocumented migrants from Malaysia sank near the Thailand Turkey-Malaysia maritime border. 13 people have been rescued so far, while hundreds are still missing. According to Malaysian officials, the vessel was carrying around 300 people, mostly Rohingya refugees. At least 4 people have died after a super typhoon Phung Wong made landfall in the Philippines overnight, unleashing fierce winds and torrential rain. The powerful storm, which caused widespread destruction with landslides cutting off several towns and ripping off rooftops, has now weakened. Footage from affected areas shows shattered windows and debris strewn across streets. Authorities said more than 1 million people were evacuated ahead of the typhoon's landfall. A powerful tornado accompanied by strong winds and heavy rains has torn through southern Brazil, leaving 6 people dead and hundreds injured. The town of Rio Bonito de Iguaçu was the hardest hit, with more than half of its urban area suffering roof collapses and widespread structural damage. Authorities say 437 people have been treated for injuries, while around 1,000 residents have been displaced. Coming up, US has given Hungary a waiver from US sanctions on Russian oil and gas imports for a period of 1 year. We decode why this is significant with Rahul Chhabra, former Indian ambassador to Hungary, on the other side. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Global Lens. The United States has exempted Hungary from sanctions over its purchases of Russian oil and gas. Hungarian foreign minister claimed that the exemption is full and unlimited, but White House officials clarified that it is limited to 1 year. The decision came after Hungarian Prime Minister and long-term Trump ally Viktor Orbán met the US president at the White House on Friday. Orbán personally appealed for a reprieve, explaining why the country needs Russian oil. This was their first bilateral meeting between the two leaders since Donald Trump returned to power. Trump noted that Hungary faces challenges sourcing oil and gas because it is landlocked and lacks ports. Last month, the Trump administration sanctioned 2 of Russia's largest oil companies, Lukoil and Rosneft, and threatened sanctions on those who buy from them. As per the International Monetary Fund, Hungary relied on Russia for 74% of its gas and 86% of its oil needs in 2024. The IMF warned that if Hungary were to cut off Russian natural gas, it could lead to output losses exceeding 4% of the country's GDP. Hungary and Slovakia have paid Russia $13 billion from its oil from February 2022 till the end of 2024. The new exemption allows Hungary to continue purchasing Russian gas through the Turk Stream pipeline. In return, Hungary has agreed to buy US liquefied natural gas under contracts worth $600 million and nuclear fuel for its 1 nuclear plant for about $114 million. The timing of the exemption is significant. It comes 5 months before Orbán faces a tough re-election at home. All right, let me now go across to Ambassador Rahul Chhabra, former Indian ambassador to Hungary. Ambassador Chhabra, thank you very much for joining us. Why do you think the United States went ahead and gave this waiver to Hungary?
Good evening, Parikshit. Good to be on your show again. Yeah, it's important to keep in mind that Prime Minister Orbán is not just another European leader. Even though he represents a country of less than 10 million people, Hungary really, thanks to him greatly, punches above its weight. So he's firstly probably the most experienced European leader in position as of now. He's been Prime Minister earlier from 98 to 2002. And now he's in his 4th term and going to be, as you said, running for re-election. And he's been in position since 2010. So he's quite an experienced leader. The other reason is obviously that shares the same ideology as President Trump. In fact, he's probably the originator, in that sense, the original practitioner of this ideology on immigration, family values, nationalism. In fact, when I was there in 2015 to 2018, I met him on several occasions. And that was the time when if you remember, the migrant crisis was just beginning to come across Europe, the waves. And at that time itself, Prime Minister Orbán was sort of quite firm on his views. Then the other reason is, of course, that he's been quite skeptical about the way NATO and EU is handling the Ukraine crisis. So that seems to fit in again with President Trump's manner of thinking. Then there's also President Trump trying to sort of get closer to these sort of right-wing leaning leaders like Fico, Meloni. So, so there are several reasons that the US has sort of therefore taken the step to give him this exemption.
All right. And what are the concessions you feel Hungary and Prime Minister Orbán have given to President Trump?
Hungary has obviously given this big commitment of buying LNG, which you mentioned, of $600 million, buying nuclear fuel. It's also giving the US sort of, this sort of resistance to EU and NATO. So EU and NATO cannot completely ignore, because they operate on consensus. So if you have somebody like Hungary sort of standing there in the middle, and there are others also, Slovakia and the others, one or two others. So in that sense, it gives the US a big hold over European policy in terms of having this person who's clearly on their side. And then, of course, it is sort of shows selective pragmatism from the Trump's from his side, that Trump can be pragmatic and can give this thing. So there's both ways sort of benefits going on.
Right. Do you think there is a cue for India here? Is there something that we can do to achieve a trade deal, maybe get a waiver from the United States?
Definitely. I mean, I think this shows that, there's no such set red line in that sense. It's all a line drawn in the sand. I mean, these lines can be moved in either direction. And anyway, we have been sort of having a de facto waiver since 2022, which, I mean, we were buying Russian oil. Everyone was aware about it. So that was continuing until now. In otherwise, even from the legal point of view, we really aren't bound by Western sanctions. So we aren't really bound to follow this. So this sort of shows that there is scope for negotiation. There is definitely a big scope for negotiation.
Right. Also, when we were to ask you about the possibility of India getting a waiver to buy oil from Lukoil and also Rosneft, do you think that can happen at all?
Definitely. I mean, I think this shows that this is a clear takeaway that, firstly, it shows that negotiations in today's world with the US particularly are leader-led. Prime Minister Modi has had a good rapport with President Biden, and he had until recently a very good rapport with President Trump. So maybe recently there have been some friction points, but it can always get back on track. So that's one. And then it's also sort of clearly reflecting this deal that transactional diplomacy works. So if you are ready to offer things, so in which case India needs to operate, which we sometimes don't really do, but maybe now we are more and more doing, as a whole of government approach. So you agree to buy, we also thinking of buying more LNG from them. We are thinking of sort of relaxing the nuclear liability laws so that US nuclear firms can come in to the Indian market. We are deciding to buy more defense equipment. The recent announcement of GE, the engines coming in. So it requires all that sort of falling into place. Then we need to play our geopolitical card, of course, which is really, I mean, everybody knows it sort of, the importance of the Indo-Pacific and how we will be there. In terms of the geoeconomics, of course, the rising middle class, the growth of the Indian economy, future in the next decade or two of US companies having huge markets opening up in India. So all these things will have to be sort of put in play, and the strategic importance of being, after all, it was the US that did the India-US nuclear deal. So in that sense, there are lots of segments of the US establishment that understand the importance of India in the current geopolitical space.
My final question, Ambassador Chhabra, but doesn't this also show double standards on the part of Donald Trump and the US? You do not put that 50% tariff, prohibitive tariffs on China for their purchase of Russian energy. You go ahead and give a waiver to Hungary. You don't crack down on Europe, which is a big buyer of Russian energy, but you go after India. Why is that happening over and over again?
So, I mean, he's waiting to negotiate. I mean, he's a person who deals in, loves negotiations, transactions. So, I mean, he's waiting for the offer coming in, which when it's sort of suitable, they're ready to. So it's not going to be, I mean, not necessarily be a permanent sort of duty on India. So it's just waiting for the right moment when you have everything in place. We've made an offer. We will be probably needing to revise the offers. So this always goes back and forth during negotiations. So also President Trump has realized sort of, you really can't push countries like Brazil, China, India. China, of course, had a card that they played, the rare earths card. They played the little bit of the chips, the other chips, which are the little below the sort of not the highest level chips. So they tended to squeeze that. So they had cards that they could play in that sense, which we really don't have. So we have to play these other ones, which are really more long term and different nature of these, which we must be doing. And I think it'll just waiting for the right moment to sort of resolve itself.
All right. Thank you very much, Ambassador Chhabra, for joining us on the program, giving us an explanation as to how this US-Hungary deal and waiver came through, and the takeaways for India as well, which is busy negotiating a trade deal at the moment. With that, it's a wrap on another edition of Global Lens. Goodbye, and many thanks for watching.